I've got to ask you this: like, didn't have any criminal record prior to the events of January 6th, right?
Speeding tickets. That was my rap sheet. Yeah. So,
that was
yes. So despite only speeding tickets, I was denied pretrial release. Yes.
For seditious conspiracy that you were brought up on. I mean, give us it was a long trial. It's going to be too much to cover right now, but how the hell does that even happen? You're going down on January 6th as security for two permitted parades, permitted protests, I should say.
Permitted events. Yeah.
Permitted events. And this is what people sort of also lose track of when they say, oh, they had no idea so many people were coming down. That memo that circulated internally, they knew damn well, FBI knew damn well that people were planning things. There were permitted events for that day. So you're
all around the Capitol, just as it happened in November and December, there were multiple permitted events back then. And that's my point, is that the bad guys saw the pattern of Trump supporters at Freedom Plaza, then marching to the Capitol, filling the grass to listen to additional speakers, like on the Supreme Court steps, for example. So they saw that pattern, and they saw the same thing happening in J6. I believe there were 8 permits pulled all around the Capitol. They just manipulated what they knew was going to happen. They knew that Trump supporters were going to go from Trump's rally on the Ellipse to the Capitol for additional rallies and speakers, and that's what they manipulated. So Roger Stone was going to be the keynote speaker at the Ali Alexander event on the east side of the Capitol. Marjorie Green was going to speak, Josh Hawley, Louis Gohmert from Texas. Multiple Congress members were going to go out there after they got done with the challenges to the elector slates. That was the plan that day. So it's bizarre to see not just Democrats, but also Republicans like Troy Nehls yesterday in that J6 hearing threw us all under the bus and made it sound like we all just spontaneously assaulted the Capitol. It was disgusting. We can talk about that if you want.
I just want to get into how, in the name of sweet holy hell, they decided to go after you for seditious conspiracy, and how they succeeded at doing it. I mean,
it's just like in the Soviet Union. You know, the watchword in the Soviet Union, the secret police, was "Show me the man, I'll show you the crime." That's what it was like here. The target, of course, was President Trump, to prevent him from being able to ever hold office again, either by disqualifying him under the 14th Amendment, or by putting him in prison, or by tainting MAGA so badly that he couldn't win another election. So they tried to put him in prison. He was charged for J6. In fact, he was charged with one of the same charges I was charged with, the 1512 obstruction of official proceeding. And they were building up to, that's the whole point of all of our prosecutions. The whole point of our prosecutions was like a manufactured mob conspiracy case where they create this conspiracy, then they put Trump on top like a cherry on top. He's the kingpin, and we are the foot soldiers. And the big tell is that on February the 16th, with Benny Thompson as the key plaintiff, they filed a lawsuit, February 16, 2021, suing Trump, Giuliani, Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, alleging a conspiracy to disenfranchise Black voters, to violate the KKK Act, to disenfranchise Black voters by assaulting democracy. That's how early the narrative was already set and baked in. Everything else after that was kabuki theater to make that true, to build up our, and this is why we're all put in solitary confinement. I was held in solitary confinement for over a year, 15 months total. So my co-defendants were held for 2 years in solitary confinement. It was all meant to try to coerce us into false confessions of seditious conspiracy, and then to turn on President Trump with bearing false witness. And we refused to do that. We went to trial.
What was the rationale for putting you in solitary? Was it COVID related, or was it, did they, nothing?
They would bounce around different rationales. First, they would say, oh, you're here for your own safety. Of course, we were denied pretrial release. Like I said, I wasn't a flight risk, didn't even have a passport. How was I a threat to the community? They didn't arrest me until a year after J6. It took them time to build up, because I didn't enter the Capitol. I didn't fight with police outside. My co-defendants, who did go inside, some of the Oath Keepers did go inside, they were arrested pretty quickly. But I wasn't arrested for a year because they had to go fake. They had to go create fake evidence and coerce false confessions, and they got that. A couple of Oath Keepers with the threat of life in prison, because they threatened all of us with life in prison. They said that this is tantamount to treason, so therefore we're going to ask the judge for life in prison. So y'all got a letter like that. So they threatened guys with life in prison, and 2 of them rolled over. Two of our guys, one from Alabama, one from North Carolina, took a deal and pled guilty to seditious conspiracy, the worst charge of all, but they never saw any jail time. That was their quid pro quo. If you will say that Stewart Rhodes planning to attack the Capitol, you won't do jail time. And that's what they got. And in fact, the same judge, Judge Mehta, who gave me 18 years, gave them when he finally sentenced them in December of 2024, he gave them probation only. So they were rewarded for their repeating of the big lie and their loyalty. I was punished. And so
and I've got to ask you this. So the Oath Keepers, it's an amazing thing because I remember what I originally thought. And I was like nervous about covering it because I thought the Oath Keepers was some sort of racist, white supremacist, extremist group. And by covering it, not even favorably, but by covering it not critically, somehow I'd be tacitly endorsing this. You know, same thing for the Proud Boys. And now
I'm a quarter Mexican. My mother grew up picking grapes. And I, in fact, when I was a teenager, my grandparents were still picking grapes and asparagus and other working in the fields. I'd go out there and help them just so I can learn my heritage. That's my mom's side of the family.
But the Oath Keepers,
it's disgusting to have that taint thrown at us. It's just complete bullshit.
No, that's well. First, I never knew you were a quarter. I thought it was half Mexican after what my research today. But
my mom was half Mexican, half white. She never knew her father who died during World War II. So that's why she was raised in Mexican culture.
And so you start the Oath Keepers. It's not an extremist organization. It doesn't engage in any criminal activity. You get tied up in Jan 6. When do you find out? I mean, for those who don't know, there were informants within the FBI that were, I don't know, you know, informing is an informant is not the right word because they were fabricators or manufacturers within the Oath Keepers manufacturing this narrative of seditious conspiracy. When did you find out that there were FBI informants embedded within the Oath Keepers?
Well, we had found out back during the Malheur occupation that we found one who went by Oath Keeper Mama Bear back then. We found out in the trial of Ellen Bundy, or the Bundys, that she was actually a paid informant. So we knew it was always a vulnerability. But what happened in our trial for J6 is I'm getting ready to call, and I'm still under a gag order from Meta. I can't tell you the person's name, but the New York Times exposed this person. So you can go look at the New York Times from November of 2022 and find out who this person is. Or 2023, I mean. No, wait a minute. 2022. So anyway, we're at trial. I'm going to call this person as a key witness, one of the leadership in Oath Keepers, and then the prosecution said, hey, we have to let you know he actually works for us. And it just blew me away. I had no idea. And it turns out, my attorney said that this guy had been paid $6,000 a month to inform on Oath Keepers.
Seems based on... his name was Greg McWhirter. I'll bring it up just so that
I didn't say it.
No, I'm not getting you in trouble. It's in the New York Times. Looky. Informant likely to testify. So you're getting ready to call someone as a witness, which means that you, your counsel, your entire team have been in discussion strategically, information-wise, with someone who is acting either currently or had acted as an informant to the FBI. You don't need to be say it again.
And we did not know it yet until we announced him as a potential witness. That's when the prosecution had to tell us, because that's one of the few remaining rules we have in courts.
This is what it is. I mean, you don't have to be a lawyer. You don't have to be a cop. You have to have a half a functioning brain to understand. It was Lavrenta Baria, who said, show me the man, I'll show you the crime.
Yes.
You've got someone who you've been inviting into your defense to strategize, who is informing the prosecution and the prosecution's team.
The exact same thing happened to the Proud Boys.
Yeah, but I mean, that's where I first learned about it. And I was like, this is the most absurdly insane thing imaginable. And yet somehow you still have the very same people, not just at the FBI. I don't know if you saw this. This was Kyle Seraphin putting this out today, which was Christopher Rea. Less than a week ago, I received a call from FBI Director Cash to serve as co-deputy director of the FBI. I'm honored and grateful. And from what I understand, he was one of the guys that was involved in some of the school persecutions. Kyle Seraphin says, congrats on your promotion. Would you like to comment on the FBI Houston Fields Office surveillance of Catholic school teacher Christine Crowder for false Jan 6 allegations? There's a whole thread here. I know your answer to this because I was listening to a few of your interviews earlier today. And we'll get into Tina Peters in a second. But what's your opinion? What's your assessment? What is your bafflement, if that's a word, as to what the hell is going on with the FBI?
I think Kash Patel is a traitor. That's what I think. I think he's either been compromised or bought off, but he's joined the bad guys. He's joined the bad team. He is, like, for example, when it came out that 274 FBI agents were in fact in the crowd, counter to all the lies that were told to Congress all these years. What did Kash Patel say about that? First of all, it didn't come from Kash Patel. That's where it should have come from. Patel and Bongino should have held a press conference announcing that, but no, it came from Congress. So Congress finally disclosed that this is true. There were 274 FBI agents in the crowd, And President Trump's initial response was, there's no way they were there to do legitimate law enforcement. They were there to be part of the insurrection. And he's correct. But Kash Patel said, oh, they were improperly used as crowd control that day. That's what Kash Patel said, to spin and cover for the deep state. So I think he's gone beyond incompetence, beyond doing nothing. He's actually become part of the cover up and part of the deep state.
And everybody has to appreciate this as well, because for the longest time we're saying, there were agitators, agents provocateurs, agents, CHSs, whatever, assets in the crowd. Yeah. It was denied. It was called a conspiracy theory. Yeah. Then it gets disclosed, but not by Kash Patel. And so it's the continual moving goalpost. It's not happening. Oh, it's happening. Let's reposition and pivot and spin. They were there for crowd control. Yeah. Can you explain to everybody on earth why that would be so?
Well, I'll tell you this. And Steve Baker's response immediately was like, hey, I have seen all the video, and this is complete bullshit. He said, there's no way. I didn't see any indication of FBI being used for crowd control that day. He called it bullshit.
Well, and also, could you explain also the inherent risks of having plainclothes people purporting to be FBI to crowd control or enforce the law in that type of circumstance?
It doesn't happen. It's a complete nothing burger. There's no such thing as the FBI doing crowd control like that undercover. It's ridiculous. So no, they were there as agitators and provocateurs. That's what they were doing, and they got caught. So now that they're being caught, Kash Patel, the good little bitch for the deep state, covers for them by explaining it away. And yesterday, Ivan Rickman and I attended the J6, the GOP-led J6 hearing on the pipe bomber, and you had Chairman Loudermilk repeating Kash Patel's nonsense. Oh, they were there doing crowd control. So they're carrying water for Kash Patel already. They're covering for Kash Patel, and it's like a big love fest for Kash Patel. It's disgusting.
My question is, this is going to get into a number of other of the issues, is how Trump is not personally pissed off by all of this. He's got some people there. We've been putting a lot of blast on her, Jocelyn Ballantine, who tried to extort false confessions out of Enrique Tarrio.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
She coerces Jeremy Bertino. He did a false confession and bore false witness. And then now, after the fact, he signed an affidavit saying that, hey, I was coerced with threat of life in prison. That's why I did this. She's already been caught committing perjury. And in our case, the Oath Keeper trial, there were two Capitol Police officers, one Officer Lazarus and the other one Harry Dunn, who were also caught red-handed committing perjury. And they were caught after the fact by Steve Baker, once again, who looked at all the videos, and because they testified they were together that day. Because our guys actually helped Harry Dunn, de-escalated a confrontation where Harry Dunn was probably about ready to shoot Trump supporters. But our guys stepped in between, put their hands out towards the Trump supporters with their back towards Harry Dunn, and calmed everyone down, in particular Harry Dunn. And at first, in his first 302 to the FBI, he admitted that the Oath Keepers helped him that day. But then at trial, after they coached him to lie, he said, oh no, that was some other group. It wasn't the Oath Keepers. I was mistaken. Some other guys dressed like that helped me that day. The Oath Keepers were hostile. And Officer Lazarus was with me and saw it. And then Lazarus gets on the stand and says, yes, I was with Harry Dunn. I saw the threats that the Oath Keepers were being very threatening and hostile. Well, it turns out, as Steve Baker discovered, at that moment, Lazarus was actually in the tunnels under the Senate on video. You can't be in two places at the same time. So they've been caught red-handed committing perjury. And so to me, it's like, well, why haven't they been prosecuted for perjury? That's a good question, right?
My question is, why isn't Trump personally offended that the people who try to entrap him, facilitate another impeachment, remove him from office, and prevent him from holding office, why is he not personally offended that his DOJ is not only continuing to employ them, but apparently giving raises to some of them?
I don't know. I mean, Cara Casanova, right there in the White House, asked him, what about Valentine? And she said, hey, this is the same prosecutor that went after General Flynn, the same one that went after the Proud Boys, the suborn perjury. And he said, well, we'll have to take a look into that. So he might be concerned about it, but it's really bizarre. It's like a repeat of the first term. It's like a lot of times the communication with President Trump is on Twitter or on Truth Social, and it's like he's not president. He complains about something he sees going on inside of his own administration, and yet nothing's done about it. They haven't purged out all the prosecutors, as we've already noted. They haven't purged out all the FBI agents who persecuted all of us. It's as though the Biden administration was still running the DOJ and the FBI. I see no difference, frankly. And that's why, like the persecution of Brian Cole, I believe is an innocent man being railroaded, and it was like deja vu all over again, sitting in that hearing yesterday. He's in solitary confinement, facing trial. And at that moment, there's a congressional hearing tainting him as the pipe bomber, tainting the jury pool. by being done by both Republicans and Democrats. They were united yesterday in saying that Brian Cole is the pipe bomber, ignoring all the evidence Steve Baker put out, all the stuff that Kyle Seraphin's been saying about this, ignoring all of that. It's disgusting.
Well, there is zero question that Kyle, Steve Friend, and a number of the, what do they call them, the suspendables, are not only persona non grata, but apparently the enemy of the current FBI.
Yeah.
Probably because they're holding a mirror to it and exposing all of the unresolved corruption and ongoing corruption within the FBI.
Yeah,
I never knew Kash Patel beforehand. I didn't have a negative opinion of him going into this. We were all quite thrilled and enthralled that he was going to be.
I was too. I read his book while I was in prison. Government Gangsters was a good book, So yeah, where'd he go? It's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I like Bongino. I was in Alexandria jail in solitary confinement. I had a little AM/FM radio. I listened to Bongino every day, and that Bongino was awesome. Where'd he go? He's been replaced by another Bongino.
Well, I said, and I knew Bongino. I still know. I mean, I know him. I think everybody was saying if he can't do what he wants to do there, then he's got to get out. And people were saying this 6 months ago. He's gotten out now. Now people say, well, now that he's out, he's got to, reveal all the skeletons in the closet. I'm like, he wouldn't do that even if he could, because he doesn't want to sink this administration, and nobody wants this administration sunk, because the alternative is existentially worse.
No, actually, he would be doing President Trump a great favor and great service to President Trump and this country to blow the whistle on all the dirt. That's not what he's doing. He's covering for it. They're going to lose the midterms precisely because this administration is acting just like, when it comes to the DOJ and the FBI, are acting just like the prior one. Nothing's changed. They're still doing what they did. The fact that Ballantyne is still working and now, once again, prosecuting an innocent man, and Bongino's part of that. He stood up there and pointed his finger at Brian Cole also. So it's not simply that, oh, he couldn't say anything. He participated in the persecution of an innocent man. So I'm going to call that dereliction of duty. And frankly, I'm going to call it treason. Because it's by doing that, they're covering for what I believe is the accurate pipe bomber. I think Steve Baker was on the right track. That's exactly why they suddenly found this other guy depended on, was to deflect attention from the CIA operation that it was.